today we have a glorious day, which is perfect timing because we're out at Volunteer Point, one of the best spots in the Falklands if you love wildlife and specifically penguins. It's one of the few places on the islands where you can see the king penguin.
No matter if you're visiting the Falklands for just a day on a cruise or exploring by land, a trip to Volunteer Point should be very high on your list of things to do in the Falklands. Our day trip out to see the king penguins was a highlight among highlights on our 2 weeks in the Falklands. But first we have to back up a little bit because you can't talk about a trip to Volunteer Point without talking about the drive. Most trips to Volunteer Point depart from Stanley, and getting there is part of the adventure. This drive has a bit of a reputation among locals. The first half an hour starts out pretty innocent, but when the road ends, that's when the real drive begins. Now Google Maps shows the thin white line indicating a road to Volunteer Point from Johnson's Harbor, but that's not really the case. There isn't a road, there isn't even really a track to Volunteer Point. You kinda have to know the way. And you risk getting bogged, as the locals call it, while making the 10-mile plus voyage across peat bog-filled farm fields to get here. Now as challenging as it sounds, the ride is actually a lot of fun. And a sure sign that you've made it is the red roof of the warden's house. During high season, a warden stays out full time to make sure everyone cares for the wildlife. Our first glimpse of the kings was a small cluster of young adults standing around a perfectly still pond. In the background there were a few sheep grazing with their lambs, and it just doesn't get too much more Falkland Islands than this. If I had to pick just one photo to sum up my trip to the Falklands, it'd probably be this one. Now king penguins are massive birds, standing almost 3 feet tall, nearly 1 meter, and weighing close to 40 pounds. The adults are regal looking birds with golden accents outlining their jet black face. The gold color doesn't stop there, it also fringes their bright white chest. The young look nothing like their parents. They have a thick brown set of fluffy feathers that looks almost like they're wearing a parka. After a short photo shoot with the penguins near the pond, we made our way down to the sugar white sand beach that was also full of king penguins. Here we found another quintessential Falkland Islands shot. Groups of penguins were coming and going from fishing, splashing around the turquoise water. There was also a thin layer of water that made some great reflections. After a few hours on the beach, the calm morning gave way to a sunny but very breezy Falklands afternoon. The wind carries sheets of sand across the beach, making it a virtual no-go zone for anyone with a camera in hand. So pro tip, if it isn't windy, at any point during your time in Volunteer Point, stop what you're doing and head to the beach. Our next stop was to the main part of the penguin colony. Set back from the beach a few hundred feet is a cluster of black, white, and yellow, and lots of squawking. The king penguins nest on grassy hills away from the beach in a group known as a rookery. Even if you didn't know where the colony was, you could just follow your ears. The king penguins have a very nasally, trumpeting call, and with a few thousand birds, there's always someone squawking. During our visit in early December, it was too early for this year's chicks to be hatched, so inside the rookery it was mostly adults sitting on their eggs, waiting for them to hatch.
Right now a lot of the little penguins are losing their baby down, and they're turning into their waterproof plumage, as it's called, and they're kind of homely but kind of cute at the same time.
On the outskirts, there are groups of young penguins born last year, hanging out together. Some of the young penguins have begun to molt, losing their brown baby down, and they start to look more like the adult in their black and white waterproof plumage. Most of the young ones that day were stuck somewhere in the middle in that awkward phase of life between childhood and becoming an adult that I'm sure most of us can relate to. The penguins stuck in between were not the most attractive, but they soon became some of my favorites. There were signs posted to protect the penguins, which we of course respected. However, the juvenile penguins didn't stay on their side of the signs. They came right up to investigate us. No matter how far back we stayed, these fuzzy little penguins came right up to us, and they even pecked at our cameras a few times. At one point, I took a break from photographing the main colony to watch a group of 3 curious penguins waddle around my camera and tripod. They were so interested in my camera, I set out my GoPro and let them play with it. You have to watch out though, just because they're young doesn't mean they're small. They're more than big enough to knock over a camera set on a tripod, like they almost did to me. It was tough to say goodbye to these amazing penguins, but the road out was the same one we took to get here, and it's not one you want to attempt in the dark. The day we spent visiting Volunteer Point was one of the highlights of not just this trip to the Falklands, but this whole last year of traveling. So if you're looking for unique wildlife experiences, put Volunteer Point and the Falkland Islands on your list. We hope you enjoyed seeing penguins here at Volunteer Point. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and if you want to see more travel videos from the Falkland Islands and other great destinations, consider subscribing. We try and put out one new travel video every week. And if you're looking for even more info on Volunteer Point, check out our post linked in the description. Well, thanks for watching, and until next time, safe travels.